What's going on, everyone, and welcome to the RabidMining YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be checking out, my crypto mining basement. It's been a while since I've done an update, so I'm going to show you what I have mining, what I'm mining with, what I am mining, power consumption I'm currently using, how much power I actually have left to get through, and what I'm going to do if I start running into power limiting factors. Also, we're going to take a look at some changes I want to make, like that server PSU that I do have running those CPU mining rigs, as well as some new OCTOMINER cases that did come in that I plan on swapping GPUs into those later on in the future. So let's start with my CPUs here, guys, and there are links to pretty much anything I talk about in the description, so be sure to check those out if you are looking for any of these type of components. So yes, I do CPU mining, obviously. I love CPU mining myself. I got 6 rigs on this shelf here. These are all 3900X Ryzen CPUs. Those two there are 3950X CPUs. I got one more 3900X CPU right there, as well as another single 3900X, little on my test bench or dealio here, and my workstation, which is a 5950X. That is a total of 11 CPUs that I do have mining for me. So currently these are all on Monero Ocean. I'm testing that out this week. My best coins that I love mining myself personally is probably Raptorium or RTM. Now, when you talk about CPU mining, a lot of people go straight to XMR or Monero. They're thinking, you know what, it's not very profitable. How can you mine your CPU making only 12, 13 cents per day? You can't even pay for power. That is correct if mining on XMR. Now, there's a lot of other CPU mineable coins out there that's not XMR, and obviously Raptorium is one of them. Monero Ocean pays you out in XMR, but it mines a whole bunch of different coins as well, and profit switches you out based on the benchmarks that you have. It calculates the hash rate that you have on the networks of those coins. It calculates that difficulty as well as price, and mines the best coin for you based on your CPU, and then pays you out in XMR. It's a nice profitable way to mine as well. So there's a lot of CPU mining options out there other than directly mining XMR, which the majority of the people out there do think that's almost like the only coin out there. So these 3, 4, 5 rigs right here, so these 3 on top, 2 at the bottom, these 5 are running off this single 1200 watt server power supply. Now, because I do have this plugged into 240 volt, this power supply does give a full 1200 watts. If it was only on 120 volt, I believe you only get 900 watts out of it, and some of them, keep in mind, if you're only on 110 volt, you may only get 800 watts out of a 1200 watt server power supply. So it is recommended. I usually run everything I possibly can off 240 volt. It's better for efficiency. These PSUs are cheaper than buying a bunch of ATX PSUs, and in order to hook those up, link in the description, but here, this is an X4 breakout board. It runs to 2 wires, which I do have running into these Pico switches right here. These are 300 watt Picos. They are rated, one right there, right over there, and then I got a couple more in the back behind these guys over here. So these ones are running them. I do plan on running possibly this one as well. I'm going to take my Chia mining and everything off that GPU out of there. And I'm going to throw this into HiveOS as well. This is the only rig I currently have running in Windows at the moment, and everything else is on HiveOS. I really prefer running HiveOS over Windows and any other operating systems myself because I just love it. It's so easy to use. You can do it on the go. You can go for groceries, change your algorithms around, change coins, change your overclock settings. Whatever you got to do, HiveOS can do it. Now these guys over here, these are running on ATX PSUs because I got to get some more Picos together, another server power supply, but I am running it through this splitter. And the reason I'm running a splitter is, and the other reason why I'm mainly running the server power supply, is because you have to use a cable for every single ATX PSU you use, and then eventually, depending on the PDU you do have, like here you can see I have 4 banks of CL13, and over here I have a bunch of banks in the back of this of CL13 as well. But those fill up fairly fast when you're doing this. So that's why I am using the splitter here as well as that server power supply, because now I only have 1 plug coming in. Here again, only 1 plug coming in, and it opens up a lot more plugs. Now if you're running big bad boy power supplies, anything 1500 watts or over, or even these OCTOMINER rigs right here, you will be utilizing these CL19 to CL20 plugs, and that way you get a lot more power for your bang. And these are higher wattage banks here. I believe each bank here Each plug itself is about 12 amps each, where back here each bank of 4 is only 8 amps. But these are for lower power stuff like my CPUs, like some normal GPUs, 6 to 10 GPU mining rigs. But yeah, these plugs up here, those are for the big boy rigs. Also in CPU mining, these are fairly efficient depending how you run them. Now I like to run efficient settings on the 3900X as well as 3950Xs, and the same to the 5000 series counterparts. I run them at about 3.6 to 3.8 gigahertz at 1 volt each, and they seem nice and stable. As you can also tell, I am running no GPU on these motherboards. They do run headless, and that also, you know, saves on power and stuff as well, and saves on extra costs and expensive when trying to throw in a cheap like GT 710, which even right now I believe they're like 90 or 80 to 90 bucks a piece. So you don't need those. You save them money. You have one GPU, you can just rotate it to swap your BIOS settings and then pull it out. You don't need that GPU anymore. Now a few of you have been asking me, what am I going to do with this server power supply and my CPU rigs, because I am running off these barrel plugs. So as you can see right here, there's a barrel plug right there. Some people have been melting these. You got to make sure you have 2.5 to 5 millimeter. If you have the 2.1, they will melt and they just cannot support the power. But I did get, you know, myself a soldering kit or soldering, depending where you live. It does matter how you say it. Some people, you know, didn't like how I said it. So I'm saying both ways, solder or solder, depending where you live. And I was planning on actually soldering the wires directly onto the Pico back here, but then talking to my mod and everything in Discord, I ordered some new parts. So we're going to try a different route here. So these are Anderson plugs, if you're unfamiliar what these may be. So these are rated for 30 amp 600 volt. Now because we are running 240 volt on the server power supply into here, we are still only getting 12 volt out of the power end here. So anything coming out of here is still at a 12 volt. It's on a 12 volt rail. Keep that in mind. We're not running 600 volt. We're not running 240 volt. That's only coming into the power supply. The power supplies themselves, they discharge at 12 volt. That's what the Breakout board is giving you. So these will be rated at 12 volt, 30 amps, 12 volt is around 360 watts or so, which is over our 300 watt Pico. So we should be safe, and we should be safe here. So I'm going to be splicing these here eventually, cutting them off at both ends, and we'll be utilizing getting rid of the both barrel plug ends there and putting these connectors instead. And then I'm going to be cranking these up to about 3.8, because this side here, everything on that server power supply is running at 3.6. So I'm going to be cranking these up to 3.8 and then utilizing these plugs, and we should be good to go and not have to worry about any type of fires or anything. You're also going to need a special crimper when it does come to utilizing Anderson plugs. Not a normal crimper will not work. So these are specialized. It says here somewhere. There you go, 30 amp for Anderson, part number 1331. So here we are, 12 and 14 AWG wire. These are the crimpers you are going to need when utilizing those plugs. So keep that in mind. Make sure you have all the proper equipment before you just turn off your rigs and decide to do something and then be like, uh-oh, I'm missing something here. Down here, I do have this little Antminer L3 Plus ASIC running. Now, they are rated for 800 watts, but this thing has Hive-On firmware in it, so it's running through Hive OS as well. And I can run it just like I run my GPU rigs, as well as my CPU rigs with flight sheets and whatnot. But because I have the Hive-On firmware in there, I can run this down to 660 watts now and still keep my 504 mega hash alive. So I'm not losing any hash rate, but I did drop the wattage quite a bit. So it's nice to use Hive-On firmware for that. It's also the most secure firmware out there with antivirus and stuff. I don't believe Bliss does have antivirus in it, so you can drop your power down to 660 in Bliss as well. But again, I don't think it has the security that Hive-On does have. So now let's move into my GPUs, and then we're going to kind of talk about power, where I'm at with my power. And you know, I am starting to get close to being power limited. So some of the things I can do with some of my other rigs to free up some more power for mining. Right off the get-go, down here on the bottom is the OCTOMINER X12 Ultra. So this thing is amazing. I absolutely love this. I do have a 3090 Founders Edition in here, a bunch of 3060 Ti's, a bunch of 3070 Founders Editions, you know, so 3060. So this is all my NVIDIA rig down here now. And I did not change any thermal pads on my RTX 3090 Founders Edition. And it's hashing away 123 mega hash, no issues with temperature or anything. These cases keep everything nice and extremely cool when it does come to mining. I love them. Honestly, That's all I'm going to use for now on, I think. If I have the actual choice, I only want to use these server cases or OCTOMINERs in general over these open air frames. And that is what brings me up to, and there's my AMD rig. And here you can see I do have an OCTOMINER X8 Ultra Plus, which is their latest and baddest case that they just released. And I'm going to be throwing my AMD rigs into here sometime, you know, fairly soon. We'll see what happens when I get down to that. I needed a new cable. As you can see, the C19 to C20. The C20 male end is right here. That cable came in. I'll show you that in a minute here, but everything is in here. So this is all ready to roll. All I got to do is literally take my GPUs out of there, plug this thing in, throw in the GPUs, and we're up and mining with this X8 Ultra Plus as well. You can kind of see my AMD cards hanging out. There's a 5600 XT. I got a couple 580s in here. I got an AMD mining specific card. That's that guy right there. I also got two 5700 XTs, and then there's some 470 hiding in here somewhere, but I can't really get to it at the time. But that's sitting inside this AAAWAVE 12 GPU mining frame, running off a server power supply as well as a ZSX amp breakout board. Those are amazing breakout boards as well. Link in the description if you do want to pick one of those bad boys up. All right, so we pretty much went through everything I got here, what I got running, what I'm mining. Actually, I didn't go through what I'm mining on my GPUs yet. I am solo mining Ethereum. I only have 1 gigahash, so I'm like, oh, why are you solo mining Ethereum? Well, that's because if I was mining to a pool for the next 5 to 6 months, I would only utilize with 1 gigahash the equivalent of about a block. So I'm hoping I have 5 to 6 months to smash myself out a block and potentially earn more before the merge happens and Ethereum is no longer mineable than I would get for mining to a pool. So it's pretty much do or die is what I got going on here. Maybe I'll go back to a pool. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And you know, I'm thinking about solo mining on my CPUs yet again. I always fail at solo, but you know what? The temptation is always there to potentially smash out that block. So now let's talk about power. So everything, you know, rolling together here comes into this single meter right here, courtesy of Space Goats, of course. And I'm using 4,400 watts, usually around 4,500 watts. It does go anywhere from 43 to 4,500, depending on the algorithm that these CPU miners are using, because they are using the Ghost Rider algorithm, currently Monero Ocean, so it'll swap to some. But if you're mining Raptorium, it switches all over the place and your power consumption could go up or down. So I max out at around 4,500 depending on the algorithm. And this is a 30 amp 240 volt, so it's rated for a maximum rating of 7,200 watts, I believe it is. But at 80%, that's what you want to run this at. You cannot run the maximum at 100% unless you are running a little bit thicker cables here. I'm running 12.2, I believe it is. But so if you go a little bit higher, like maybe 10.2 or something, you can do that. You also need an industrial grade breaker in your breaker box that allows 100% capacity. So because I don't have any of the more expensive stuff like that, I am going to be running this at 80%, and it's your recommended level anyway. 80% at a maximum consumption is about 5,760 watts. So I have about 12 to 1,300 more watts that I can throw onto this before I am considering myself maxed out at the wall in terms of power. But if I do get a whole bunch of GPUs or maybe a more powerful ASIC or something in the future, I do have options. All these CPU mining rigs, they can run 100% fine on 120 volts. So I can plug those into a normal socket. I can fit about 5 or 6 of these on a normal socket. They use about 100 and some watts each, 110, 120, depending on the algorithm. So I got about 1,000 watts worth of CPUs hanging out here that I can move to a different plug. This Antminer L3 Plus as well at 660 watts. I can move that onto a 120 volt connection as well, and I'll be okay with that because this power supply is good from anywhere from 110 upwards of 200 plus volts. So this is another option. I can move this to a 120 volt circuit as well. So I can free up another 1,1700 watts for, you know, my main 30 amp 240 volt if needed moving into the future. Right now, I still have a little wiggle worm of 1,200 watts worth, but we'll see what happens and stuff I do get into the future. So here's my corner desk where I have extra parts for building future rigs. So I do have this RebTech blockchain 8 GPU little mini mining motherboard here. I got another one just running those 2 GPUs in the bottom one there. That AAAWAVE frame, as you can see, it's hanging out in the middle. But yeah, I got another one of these. So we got 8 GPUs here. Uh-oh, guys, I just smashed my light. That's not good. My light's broke. Uh-oh. So I guess this will be part of the basement update. As you can see, we got some broken glass down here. Not as bad as I thought. Just the middle light broke. I need some new lights anyway because these actually use like 200 watts per bulb. So these are extremely inefficient in terms of recording video. So efficiency is key, guys. Don't use these lights. But I've been using them. It's what I've had. But yeah, we got some broken glass all across here. I'm gonna have to clean this up and we'll get back to it. It's a little darker than usual, but we're back here. That's the B250 we got hanging out here. We got an H110 Pro BTC Plus, and I believe he got a Zotac down here of something, and we got a BioStar motherboard. So I still have a lot of motherboards, you know, breakout boards, a whole bunch of power supplies, and I believe there's a 2400 watt power supply buried in there somewhere. So I got a lot of power and motherboards for future builds. I just need the GPUs and hardware to do it. All right, guys, so that concludes this crypto mining basement update. It's a little bit darker here. I still have one more light. I'm gonna be looking into some new ones. I'm gonna clean that up here. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think about that. Darn you light, just darn you. Comment below. All right, guys, I'll see you guys on the next one. Rabid out. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you haven't, please comment, subscribe, and like this video, as well as check out one of these other videos if you have not seen it yet. I do try to stream every Saturday and Sunday, so stay tuned for more future content.